So I've got this little tattoo here, um, and when I got it, I asked for a fern tattoo, because I really feel I love ferns, and they grow in these like beautiful, wet kind of rainforest areas, and they're also so ancient. They just remind me of the kind of, I guess, youngness of humans, because they've been around a lot longer than we have, and I think that really shows hope, and also, yeah, the fact that we really need to protect ancient landscapes as well. Oh, I have a few favourites. Um, Scotland-based one would be the Selkie story, and that's about sort of a mythological story about a woman who is a seal as well. The Selkies are like seal women who, during the light of the full moon, they become women, and the rest of the time they are seals. And yeah, I don't want to give too much away on the story because I think people should look it up. But it's a really beautiful kind of exploration of female autonomy and the importance of being your true self, and wearing your skin proudly, and being in your skin. So that's one of my favorites. So the reason I was motivated to work with nature, I think primarily was my dad being really interested in growing things and gardening, and we'd go for nature walks and he'd point out things as we'd go, and that was a really quality time spent with my family. Being out there and noticing things and looking at things, it was something I always really enjoyed. And then it was actually when I was around 14, 15 that I did the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is a program in the UK for young people mostly. And there's an expedition element as well as volunteering and things. And that was the first time I'd been camping. And yeah, I just absolutely fell in love with this sort of the freedom that I felt, I guess, from being all day just walking and then camping and being in community with a group of friends. And yeah, it felt very very much like being part of the landscape through walking and hearing things at night when you're in your tent, and learning about different contours in the landscape and the different mountain names and things. So yeah, I really loved that experience, and I think that was very formative. I was like, wow, if I find 4 days, 4 nights on my own in the wilderness so profound, like what would these women have experienced and learned in these years that they were alone, or yeah, sort of doing their solo adventure. And it made me really curious to hear stories from different people about the wisdom they gained from mostly solo adventure experiences. So that's where the idea kind of grew out from, and then it developed, and wanted to include, someone that was setting up a surf school for people of color, and how nature impacted that process, and someone that had spent months filming white-tailed eagles and the impact that had. And it just kind of grew very organically. And I got in touch with Miriam Lancewood, who co-edited the book with me, and we hit it off right away. And she had lived in the wilderness in New Zealand just with her husband for 7 years, hunting for a lot of their own food, and camping. And I found her story very inspiring, and also she was just so helpful with ideas for the book and connections and contacts. And I was like, hey, do you want to do it together? So we did, and it was a really brilliant experience. Had a really nice time working together, and now we have a book. which also includes poetry, because I really enjoy poetry. I would consider doing a part two, just because there's so many amazing stories out there. And I was thinking about what a part two might look like, and I was thinking that instead of wilder journeys, there could actually be more like close to home stories of people that have profound nature connection moments, maybe even in their back garden or in a community park or something. Um, that would be an interesting one for me because, of course, the wilder journeys. There's some really extreme stories of people climbing Everest and crossing the Darien Gap, which are all amazing. But quite a lot of people's feedback has been that they've preferred the stories that are more low key ones, like Walk in the Woodland, or there's a diversity of stories in it. But I think people might like to hear more of those because they're maybe more relatable. So while the Wilder Journeys really appeals to people that want to be inspired by crazy big adventures, there's also, now I'm living on a sort of small holding. I understand that just like everyday events can be quite touching and moving in their own way, and that they shouldn't be forgotten when it comes to nature connection. So I suppose, yeah, we saw that eco anxiety is really quite common, especially among the young people. I think the book really gave this sense of kind of trust, and that nature will really prevail and is it's so much bigger than us, and we're such a young species and things. And yeah, with the kind of hope that people might find that humbling. And as well, there's a lot of people in the book that decided to change their life to based on their journeys and what they experienced to be more in harmony with nature. And I also found that those stories were inspiring for people because it was like, oh, you can make changes. You don't have to live in this certain way, and we can all do things together as a kind of collective effort to, reduce our footprint, but not even that, just have a much more intimate, interrelated connection to the other beings around us. Honestly, the book influenced me quite a lot. I was really inspired by a lot of the stories, and while I'd already had the vision to try and live a more self-sufficient life, more in harmony with nature, I actually made it happen within a couple of years of publishing the book, about within a year actually. And yeah, now, as I said, I live on a small holding, and there's eagles flying above, and I'm growing vegetables and rearing chickens, and there's just sort of all the beauty and also challenges of living in this way that I'm experiencing. And I'm also realizing, yeah, the excitement and the beauty in being able to make things from what's in your environment. And it's such a privilege, really, to make art. I'm experimenting with making pigments from plants, and being able to rear chickens to eat the eggs. And there's also the kind of bushcraft element in some of the work I do, and knowing how to make fibers to make cord from a nettle that grows outside my house and things like that. I take so much pleasure in all of that, and I think that the stories sort of inspired that in me. And in the epilogue, I wrote that very thing, that I was inspired to learn more about bushcraft, about growing food, about sustainability. And while I had a sort of basic background in those things, now I'm really pushing myself to engage and learn those things much more. Here is the book, Wilder Journeys. And first of all, I'd like to read a section by Angela Maxwell. Really love this part. So Angela, she walked across the world and she walked across Australia, and this is about an experience in the desert. Spending time in nature and listening to my heart, as I did with the crickets and the birds, saw the self-doubt and criticism I had carried through my teens and 20s quietening, and a new voice shone through, my own inner voice. A voice that told me I was capable of anything I wanted to do. A voice that reminded me that although I had no experience in walking alone across vast distances, I was doing it, and I was enjoying it unlike anything else I'd done before. I made a vow to listen to that voice above all else. When I hit a fork in the road, I listened to whether I should go left or right. I began trusting more in myself and my abilities. So that's an example of how a wilderness adventure had just a profound effect on someone's own trust of their own instincts. And I think instincts was something that came up a lot in the book, of just, the more time you spend in the quiet of the natural world, the more your instincts heighten. And I remember, Miriam talking about that in her chapter 2, of just being much more aware of what was happening with the weather and with other animals. And she was aware of alarm calls by birds and what impact that might have on their own situation. It's called The Nightingales in Concert. The Nightingales in Concert. Under the light of the stars and held by the embrace of dark trees, we listen. Listen to the song of sweet simplicity, a resonant reminder of times gone by when the nightingales ruled the skies. How sad that I compared the sound to a machine when I should be comparing a machine to their song. And no, the Nightingales isn't a band name. The car noises in the background are more familiar. Planes flickering in the dark, the metal birds that now rule the skies instead. But tonight, just tonight, we're here for their concert. A concert of longing and loss and love and hope. A story of survival in times of adversity. A song of reproduction and repopulation to drown out the cars. I feel a stirring inside me, the will to create a life where the birds are my alarm clock, where the ecosystem is my network, and where my brain is the only hard drive. So yeah. I run some wild well-beings workshops in Stroud, and I'll just tell you a little bit about them. So it all started just after I'd done a course in a practice called mirroring. And mirroring is a practice of being able to listen to what someone is saying and to be able to bring out the wider story. And this was particularly in context of nature connection and people going out on nature solos. So someone goes out with a question or an intention into, for instance, the woods where I was based in Stroud, and they spend some hours there and then they come back. And as a guide, my practice is to listen to their story and show them the wisdom within it. So this really links back to the Wilder Journeys theme and finding the wisdom in nature. And so I'd just been on this training, and then I met a woman at a women's gathering in Stroud, and she said, "Oh, that sounds so intriguing. I'd love to try that. Can you come and do a session at my house for me and a couple of friends?" And so we got together, and I sent them off into the woods with an intention, and they came back and we shared stories, and I gave my own reflections back on what I heard in their story. And this particular woman, Naomi, said, "Wow, this is incredible! Like we can do something with this together because I do something called systemic constellations, and I'd never heard of that before." And I was very curious about it, and she said, let's try doing something together. And so it grew from there, really. And it's just the most beautiful collaboration. Using my own experience, I've done more training since in the passage work and this mirroring practice, and I therefore am really guiding people to go out, you know, looking for support from the natural world, and then helping them to see what the beings in nature are showing them. And my colleague Naomi helps people to set their intention to go out based on natural objects, and that's part of the systemic constellations, and also looking at what blocks and barriers there might be preventing them from being able to manifest those intentions. The season itself is a big part of the whole intention setting process, and how that looks is that, for instance, in autumn you may find a orange leaf that was green in the summer, and that represents something a bit different than the green leaf, and maybe it represents letting go of something, or a berry represents the fruiting of something, and that often influences people in their intention setting because we're working with these objects. So people's intentions are often quite aligned with the seasons. And there isn't one season, I don't think, that is better to set intentions than any other. I think it's all about being conscious with it, and being really wanting it to be true and to work with it. And different seasons have different qualities, as you said, and often the winter workshop, there'll be a lot of people that really intend to slow down and to rest because that's what they feel life is wanting from them. And other people will have different ones because, there's some situation that's going on in their life that they feel they need to resolve or look at. But yeah, I'd say the tone is often set by what's happening in nature. We've got our winter retreat coming up in Stroud on the 16th and 17th of November. And this is a chance for people to get together and look to nature, to what it shows them that they need in their lives at this time of year. Whether that be slowing down and resting, as I mentioned, with the kind of wintering feeling, or whether there's something else that's going on in their lives that they need to address. It's a chance for people to reflect and to review, and also to spend time with the nature beings and what they're doing at this time of year, and just looking and observing. My tips for connecting with the land that you live on, first of all, is to find a spot that you love to go to every day and just be there, just maybe for 10 minutes. And that really encourages you to notice what's changing in the landscape and in the environment. And also, if you have a question or an intention that you want to set, actually going back to that place, and seeing what it shows you. And if at that point you feel like going on a longer walk with the question in mind, on your own, that can be a really wonderful way of looking around and actually observing, and also being self-reflective at the same time. So those are suggestions I've got based on my own practices. So the sit spot and going on these walks, guided by an intention and observation of what's happening in nature. At the moment, I'm doing a PhD, which is about foraging, and I'm doing that because I had a long-term interest in ethnobotany, foraging, and what you can make and use from the environment. And I think there's partly the Wilder Journeys book inspired me to learn more about this, but it was also the PhD, for instance, in foraging was a long-term thing happening before the book. Um, I guess, yeah, I just always had a curiosity about using the materials around you to be able to survive, to be able to live. And at the moment, I don't do bushcraft in my daily life, but I do it in some of the workshops and retreats that I run in order to give people a really hands-on connection with the environment around. But still, in my daily life, I'm doing things like making uh, inks from plants, and also always finding different materials I can use to create something when I'm gardening, and that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I do find that there's something really affirming, and it gives you confidence to be able to know how to, say, make a fire from the materials around you, rather than be reliant on things that are like from a shop. And it gives you, at least for me, it gives me a sense of confidence and a feeling of yeah, autonomy as well. It makes you look at things more, and you have more of a relationship with it. And I really love that, being able to look at a plant and being like, I know what you can be used for. I can make a spoon out of you, or I can use you as a medicine, or I can use you as an ink, or I can use you as food. And it really makes you appreciate like the abundance around you, and also our interconnection with everything and how we've evolved with it. If you know the kind of traditional uses of different plants and other beings. My advice for anyone starting out with things like foraging and bushcraft would be to get a good book. I think foraging, for instance, like there's so many great guides out there, and you can almost just start with one simple thing, like, okay, I want to learn to identify sorrel in the meadows, and just one season, just learning one plant and going out and seeing if you can spot it. That will really, it will build over time, and you'll feel quite confident rather than trying to learn everything at once. It's really good to take a kind of slow approach, and also actually use that plant for something and taste it. And obviously, I have to say, be sure you know what it is before eating it. But yeah, one thing at a time rather than lots at once. Um, and when it comes to bushcraft, it is actually good to, for me, I found that it's been really helpful to be shown something. So whether you watch a YouTube video or whether you go on a course, I think that, yeah, unlike foraging, which is really accessible through books and things, I think I would personally struggle learning bushcraft through a book. And I think that you really need to see people doing what their hands, what they're doing, and to either be shown by someone who knows, or to find a YouTube video. And I've been on a couple of courses, and also spent time with people that know and have learnt from them. And yeah, that's been my ways of learning. My fears and worries are really around biodiversity, and just in the last 10 years, I've just noticed so many species just disappearing or not appearing so much. This year, here, there's just been so few butterflies and insects, and yeah, worrying about those things. Like we need all the different beings. We need the pollinators. We need the birds. We need, yeah, uh, diversity in plant life. And I guess my main worries are about that, and that there'll be big impacts for us, and that links to soil health and the diversity in that as well, and links to nutrition. links to all sorts of things. Of course, there's also the uncertainty with the climate and the impacts that that will have, and it's all related as well. What I'm hopeful about, I do see just a genuine concern from people about these issues, and I think that a couple of years ago, nature connection wouldn't even be a phrase, but now it's becoming so, and people really want to engage and want to learn. And I do see like a massive surge in interest in foraging and things like bushcraft and the nature solos that I run. Like people are really craving a reconnection, and that is hopeful for me. There's also my neighbours who I recently nominated as my local heroes. I mean, they're so inspiring for me, and they're really looking at this issue of biodiversity, and they're going, okay, we're going to make this area the most biodiverse we can, and at the same time be able to make things from the land. And they weave these baskets from the willow they've grown, and they grow vegetables, and so they're finding a way to live in this environment as part of it, at the same time as really promoting biodiversity. And it's inspiring to see people do projects like that, and it gives me a lot of hope. My happy place in nature is a beach about a 10-minute walk from where I live, and it's called Singing Sands because when you move your feet on it, the sand sings. And it's a place I go if I ever need some comfort or to reflect or just to have fun and have a fire and play and run in the sea. It's so beautiful, and I really feel so lucky to live so close to this place. And yeah, it's very special to me.